So far, while we've been looking through the visibility and graphics controls, most of the tabs that we've looked at are predefined classification systems from Revit itself, such as categories or annotation types or imports, or whether or not they're Revit links, and so on and so forth. The Filters tab, which was created in 2007 or 2008, lets us define criteria across one or multiple categories so that we can select and then alter or hide altogether our own groupings of components. You can get to the Filters dialog by going into VG Filters and then selecting the Edit New button at the bottom, or you can go to the View ribbon and select Filters from the left side. Once you're in the Filters dialog, you'll see a list of the filters that are in the template already on the left side, followed by the category list and filter rules on the right side. First, we'll go through actually creating a filter so that you can see how they work, but then we'll go through the filters that are predefined in the template. To start, we're going to click the New Filter button at the bottom left of the filter dialog, and I'm going to simply call this one Example Filter. Keep in mind that the sample filter that we're going to make here is not going to be very robust, because we just want you to understand the power of what you can do here. You can select one or more categories, so we'll pick walls and doors and floors and furniture and roofs as an example, and we'll hit OK. I'm hitting OK and then going back in the Filters dialog box because it does sometimes glitch out if you go in through the ribbon, and in this case this portion of the interface was not looking correct after I was selecting the categories. Because we have all these different categories checked, it's now asking us, do you want to have rules that apply to all categories, or you can pick rules that only apply to specific categories if you set it to OR. So we could say find a door that meets this condition or furniture that meets this other condition. We'll put it on and we'll say all categories must have comments that contain the word training. That is now a filter that we've built. So as an example, if we go back into Visibility Graphics and go to Filters, we can now use the Add button to place our filter into the view. You'll see that it came in here, and you can move it up or down in the list. It's important to mention that although the filters are basically all in alphabetical order in the template, this is not an alphabetical list, it is hierarchical. The higher the filter is on the list, the more dominance or precedence it has over the other filters in the list. Be that as it may, we'll put our example filter in and we'll say we would like to turn the lines blue for anything that meets the criteria of example filter. I'm going to turn the projection lines and the cut lines blue, since some objects may be cut and some objects may not. In fact, just so we can see the difference, we'll turn one of these to be cyan. Now, so far, nothing is going to meet the criteria because we haven't actually selected an object and gone to its comments to write training. But if we do, you'll see that now that door is going to start changing colors, both in the cut lines and the projection lines. Similarly, if we were to go to a chair, and that one is in a group, but if we were to select specific chairs and desks and write training and then finish our group, you would start to see all of the different colors showing up in these objects. Now, if we go back into Visibility and Graphics Filters, there are a few other things that are taking place. One is these are overrides that are happening on the object itself, but this column is visibility of the object itself. So you can also choose to have those items disappear, and you'll see that now they are all invisible from the view. You could also halftone them or set them to be partially transparent. if that suits your fancy. So because of this power, there's a lot that you can do with filters that makes them one of the most robust tools, and a lot of functionality in the template is built simply on the VG filter capability. We'll briefly go through all of the filters that are in the template to give you an idea of what most of them do. To start, there is a filter called clearances on all categories, and you'll notice that in most of the view templates where this filter is used, it is simply set to 100% transparent. The purpose of this is that there are objects from the Parallax libraries that have 3D clearances on them. The 3D clearances can be for both space protection of operation as well as clearances for ADA accessibility. These are all shared nested families, and that filter is simply turning them all transparent so that we can see through them in plan. This is important because if we couldn't see through them in plan, there would be a solid box here which would obscure the rest of the documentation. So the clearances all categories filter is turning all categories clearances transparent. There are also two filters, one that is looking at the floors category and one that is looking at generic model families, both looking for an abbreviation that stands for countertops. The purpose of this filter is to set the countertops to 60% transparent as a way to enable us to see base cabinets in plan. A lot of content libraries do base cabinets with symbolic line work, but this means that base cabinets can actually show their model geometry, which suddenly gives us control, allowing us to not show base cabinets at 16th inch, but then show them at 1/8 1/4. In the video on tagging doors, you will have noticed this filter, and this filter basically eliminates all of the shared nested door components from a view temporarily. This enables you to basically use tag all not tagged properly. So if we select all of the door tags in the view and delete them, you may recall that using tag all on doors would accidentally tag many nested door components. That's undesirable. Instead, if you go into Visibility Graphics Filters and uncheck the parent family's not filter, all those items will temporarily vanish. You can tag all doors, and then you can simply turn your filter back on. You will then notice that there are a large number of filters called fire rating walls, and they are 4-hour smoke, 4-hour, what we call a 4-hour check, 3-hour smoke, and so on, all the way down to 0-hour smoke. These are the filters that are creating the capabilities of the fire rated walls to work with all of the different ratings, and then to also alert us if something is overrated, literally. That is a large number of the filters that are present in a lot of the view templates. It goes without saying that what you're looking at here is the fire rated filters, and then the overrides are the specific hatch patterns that we use for the different ratings. So if you decide, for instance, that you don't want to see ratings in a particular plan type, all you have to do is go into the filters and clear out their overrides. You don't actually have to remove the filters, although you can. Very important filter follows the fire rating, and that is floors and roofs finishes on the interior. This filter is looking for the letters FIN and INT in the name of both floors and roofs. Our 1/8 inch documentation floor plan typically won't show those finishes, as they'll show up on a finish plan. This filter is usually used to simply turn on or off those finishes, and you'll see here we just removed it from the view. If you have complex floor patterns, that one will make a lot of sense. There's also a filter that will select all of the grids, and this is handy for turning the grid lines gray. Grids is a bit of a complex filter because there are also grids under the annotation category. However, they don't allow for overrides, and if you halftone them, you may not get the exact line weight that you want. Because of that, we have a filter set up that simply grabs all of the grids, and you can turn them to be gray if you want them to look that way in your view. If you were to take the override off, you would see that the grids would just go back to being black and normal line weights. Next in the list of filters is a group of filters that we call includes. These are fairly repurposable as far as the data goes. You'll see that there is include appliances, include equipment, include FF&E, include furnishings, restroom accessories, and site. If we select any object in the model and go to its type properties, you'll notice that the includes will automatically be there. This will be true even if it's not Parallax content, because these parameters have been loaded into your template that way. The goal of these parameters is both to be able to control the visibility of these items in plan, but also to control where these items schedule. For instance, if you're working on multifamily, hospitality, student housing, or other residential type properties, if you want to schedule all of your appliances, you can simply load them into your project, and then for each of the appliances, check the box called Include Me in Appliances. That will automatically make those items schedule in the appliance schedule. If we scroll down a bit, you'll also see that there is include FF&E and also include in furnishings, because some firms treat the two the same and some treat the two differently. So as you go through and you start filtering these items, you can also have different overrides on them all, including are they visible in a view, yes or no. This is particularly important because for the sake of training, we have all of these items turned on in the A201 floor plan, and they may stay on in your projects as dashed and 100% transparent lines, as you're seeing here. But if it's a complex project and you are issuing a furniture plan anyway, you may choose to simply turn off furnishings. Now in this case, because we've turned the filter off, you'll see that some of the chairs went away, but the other ones have not been filled in yet. If we then start going through the rest of our furnishings and checking the include furnishings box, as we said before, we are now adding them to the furnishing schedule, but also taking them out of the views anywhere furnishings are unchecked. The includes parameters are also the same ones that are driving the poche on the furnishings plan. So if we were to go down and find the furnishings plan, we could then go into its view and go to filters and say that furnishings and FF&E were going to be on and pochade. Going back to our floor plan and back into the visibility graphics filters dialog boxes, you'll see that there is also a filter called Life Safety Railings Code All. And you'll see that this filter is turned off basically in every single view template except for the life safety plans. If we go to our life safety plan briefly, and we go to level 1, you'll see when we get to the life safety workflow video that travel distance lines are all handled using the Revit railing tool. Of course, we want our different travel paths, such as common path of travel, egress paths, and distance to fire extinguishers and whatnot, to all show as different line weights and different line types. If we were to go look at the filters dialog of the life safety plans, instead of the one that's called Railings Code All being turned off, it is on, and then you would also see that there are specific filters that are changing the colors of the life safety railings. Since most of our views simply want to turn them all off, we only need the one filter that selects all of them. That's what you're seeing in this view right here. There is a filter in almost all of the view templates in your project that is called MEP All Systems Override. This filter actually won't affect anything in your model, but it is propagating down over top of the MEP models that you'll link in from your consultants. The backstory here is that MEP consultants using Revit have two different schools of thought for how to manage the graphics of systems in their MEP models. They can use VG filters, much the same as we do in architecture, or they can actually use what's called system graphical properties in Revit MEP. If they use system graphical properties, the colors of their MEP systems will actually show up in your architectural model, and there isn't a super graceful way to turn those colors to black, except for what we call the All Systems Override filter. So because this is already done in the template, all of the MEP models' colors should be black in all of your views as well. After the MEP All System Overrides, we're going to get into a series of filters that are all called views. These filters are not actually changing the way anything looks, they're just changing whether or not items are visible in a particular view. As an example, you'll see that there is a filter for interior elevation markers and a filter for exterior elevation markers. The exterior elevation marker one is turned on in the overall plans and is turned off in the partial plans. Similarly, the interior elevations are on in the partial plans and off in the overall building plans. The same thing goes for the millwork elevations, where they are basically showing up at the 1/4 inch plans or greater, but not at the 1/8 and 1/16 inch, so we don't have to worry about having very tight spaces with elevation markers that don't fit. Similarly, there is a separate categorization for exterior plan details, interior plan details, enlarged plans, millwork plans, vertical circulation plans. And when we look at sections specifically, there are building sections, ceiling and soffit sections, detail sections, garage sections, millwork sections, vertical circulation, and wall sections. Again, it's important to bring up that there aren't necessarily any differences between the functionality of any of those tools. If we were to cut a section right now and we were to declare it as a wall section, it would show up. If we were to cut one right next door and say that it was a vertical circulation stair section, it would still show up. But the functionality of having the filters allows us to have a one-stop shop to say, okay, in this particular plan type, partial floor plans, I don't want to see vertical circulation sections. And that means that now all of our 1/8 inch floor plans are only showing wall sections, they are not showing vertical circulation sections, and then we can tell our stair and elevator plans to show our vertical circulation sections. Beneath the view type filters, you'll also see two filters for walls. One is called finishes on the interior, one is called finishes on the exterior. As we said during wall training, the interior finish wall types will not be visible in the 1/8 inch floor plans. That way we don't have to worry about somebody accidentally putting dimensions on them when they're supposed to be laying out dimensions of architectural partitions. But we still want those items in the model so we can make sure they are accounted for with clearances and tolerances and ADA and things of that nature. We'll also have that filter turned on finish plans, floor pattern plans, etc. There is also a filter called Views Presentation, and when we get into the sheet walkthrough videos, you'll see that the template does have two entire sets of views in it. It has presentation views and it has construction documentation views. Because of that, there are two sets of elevation markers in every view. There are the condoc elevation markers, and then there are the presentation elevation markers. That's what that filter is turning on and off so that you don't have to see it in the views where it's not relevant. While those are all the major filters that will exist in the majority of the view templates that exist in the project template, if you were to hit add, you would still find that there are a large number of other filters in the project template. Going through them briefly, there are a pair of filters that look for air terminals with the name return or supply in their type name. Basically, this is how we're hatching supply or return air grills in your reflected ceiling plans. In the event that somebody is using this template with the Parallax millwork libraries, we do have filters that are simply looking at the name of the components to determine, are they base cabinets, are they features, are they full height cabinets or hardware, and so on and so forth. These filters can simply be discarded or not used if you're not using the Parallax library, or they can be repurposed, since you can see that a base cabinet is simply looking for the family name having specific characters in it. These could be repurposed to work with anybody's millwork library. There are filters looking for specific door ratings in minutes, and these filters are in use in the code compliance plans to simply apply colors to doors with different minute ratings. Similar to the fire-rated wall filters that you saw in the floor plan, there are also horizontal fire-rated filters that exist in the template. These are in use in building sections and wall sections for things like floors and roofs and ceilings. We have a filter that's called Include Me in Site Plans, and unlike some of the includes that we discussed earlier, Include in Site Plan is actually an instance property of many items in the template. That's because there may be a staircase that you want to show in a site plan, but it may not be its own stair type. Similarly, there may be retaining walls that you want to show in the site plan, but you don't want to have specific types of walls for that. Because of that, there's an include site filter, and there's also what we call an inverse filter, which is include site parentheses not. Essentially, it finds everything that is the opposite of this filter so that we can turn it off in the site plan. As mentioned earlier, there are individual life safety filters for each of the different types of railings that we're using to demarc travel distances. If you need additional types of railings for different travel distances, you simply edit type and duplicate and then create a new filter as well. There are two filters for light fixtures, and their purposes are in the reflected ceiling plan to add poche to the light fixtures to make the RCPs pop graphically a little more. This is better than using a symbol or a diagonal line across the light fixture, since that depends on the content being built a certain way, and using a VG filter over the top of the light fixture simply requires that it be a light fixture. There are a number of what we call requirements filters, and these are simple checkboxes that again will exist in every object as it gets loaded into the template. So if we look at the generic computer that we loaded in earlier, you'll see that similar to the includes, it also now has requirements parameters. The purposes of those parameters, of course, are simply to make the items turn color in what we call the requirements plan. This is simply done to provide a heightened level of coordination between us and our consultants, as the consultants can set their model up to automatically see that view in color. If we go back, beneath our requirement plans, there is also a filter called Show Me in the Slab Edge Plan for all categories. Show in Slab Edge is a parameter that has been configured at the instance level on all objects. That's because, similar to the site plan, we may elect to show specific walls in the slab edge plan if they are relevant to a slab edge. We may do that with concrete curbs that are modeled as walls, and similarly, we may want some staircases to show up in the slab edge plan, but not others. So in that case, you'll see here that if we select a staircase, we could simply say, show me in the slab edge plan, and now that staircase will show in the slab edge plan while all other staircases will not. That filter is applied to a large number of categories to make the slab edge plans malleable into what we would like them to look like. Below that, you'll notice that there are a few additional filters for views that we haven't used in every view template. There are coordination view types that are for working only. That's basically a working section type, and you can filter out all of those section markers, although you don't need to because they won't print. We also have more filters for presentation views, and we also have filters that are called walls design. There are a handful of wall types in the template that are generic in nature, generic 12-inch, generic 10-inch, generic 8-inch, and there are filters that will highlight these walls in case you need to track them all down as you start doing more detailed design. There are a series of filters related to walls that capture the different categories or the different values that we put in the wall tags in terms of the different height characters, the different wall insulation characters, and the different wall STC desired characters. These specific filters are only used in the coordination views for things like wall heights and wall insulation and the acoustic plans as well. As you can see, a lot of the filters are purpose-built, but if we were to start jumping around in between a lot of the different plans in the template and just going into the filter dialogues off the cuff, you would see that the list is basically the same, except that there are slight variations in what things are visible and what things are not. The goal here is that even though the filter list is very long, you'll all get familiar with it very quickly because the list won't be changing job to job. That basically is everything that is in the VG filters dialog.